everyone. This is Sarah Berman with Practically Writing. Today we are going to be talking about dialogue. Yay! Before we get started, do not forget to check out all of the links. You can find all of my social media and everywhere that I am selling books and where you can get a hold of me and this, that, and the other things. So make sure you check it out in the description below. Also, don't forget to wait till the very end for announcements. And let's go ahead and get started. Dialogue. Dialogue. It's that thing where characters make mouth noises back and forth. The key thing is that good dialogue is good dialogue, and we all know it when we see it. So there are a few tips and tricks to doing dialogue. Probably one of the biggest things is to make sure that your dialogue does not take a left turn and go off on a tangent, never to return. A lot of times it's really easy to get into the banter of back and forth, and next thing you know, your character's discussion has taken a turn and is no longer serving the story. So that is probably the number one way that dialogue can just fail. Everything else seems to be more of a balance, and I mean, technically even that is a balance because, you know, people kind of go off on tangents. That's completely legit and makes the dialogue seem realistic as long as you keep it under control. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about it, is keep everything kind of under control. I do have a very strong policy in my dialogue, which is apparently pretty decent. Anything that I put in the dialogue needs to serve a purpose. Whether it is conveying information, whether it is forwarding the story, or whether it is developing character. I tend to hint at accents more than I tend to really just go all in on the accents. It's just enough to really get the general auditory feel of them, as opposed to, you know, making sure that every accent word is written as it sounds, because sometimes you need the clarity of spelling it out properly over the characterization of writing it out as it's accented. So again, you know, it's one of those balance things. If I were to make a recommendation, I would say err on the side of correct spelling, because as with all things, the number one rule is that your audience should understand what's going on. So if you're throwing in accents that, while technically correct, nobody can understand because they're, you know, maybe they're not familiar with the accent, maybe the person uses too heavy of a drawl for a lot of people to really be able to interpret when reading it, or maybe they use, you know, Gaelic words. So you want to make sure that your accents aren't so strong that they actually inhibit a reader from being able to read them. And just because you understand it does not necessarily mean that the reader understands it. You kind of want to go with the lowest common denominator there. You know, dropping the G's is something that's super easy. Abbreviating the into TH, because people kind of skip over the vowel aspect of that whole word. They do that. Pacing. There are some people who will sit there and go, well, you know, you want like one or two sentences and then you switch persons, and you want one or two sentences and then you switch persons. That works right up until it doesn't. Mostly you want it to sound conversational. Think about how you and your friends talk. There's times where people jump in really, you know, aggressively. There are times when somebody is saying something, and what they're saying is just that right combination of fascinating that everybody's just like, and just sitting there listening to them go on and on. And sometimes it's, a lot of back and forth. The major difference between written dialogue and, sitting around with your friends is you get to polish it a little bit, so you don't have the fumbles and the jokes that fall flat because, you said it wrong, or, you don't have those mistakes. You have the opportunity to polish those things. On the other hand, again, with characterization, there might be times when you want to express that a character has fumbled a joke. So, there's always that. I don't necessarily recommend a specific, number of sentences or even sentence length. It just needs to go back and forth naturally. Really, the best way to tell that is either get somebody to, read a character with you, sit down and have a full-on reading, and just read it out. See how it sounds out loud. Make sure that, everybody has a chance to read it through beforehand so they can pick it up and maybe, really show off that rhythm. The other option is for you to adopt, voices and read all of the characters yourself, so you kind of get that pacing back and forth. So some of us are lucky enough to have voices in our heads that do that job for us. The thing you really want to kind of nail down, though, is the naturalness of it. And a lot of people will say never have like O's and ums and such like that in there. I say use them judiciously. That's my $25 word for the day. You need to make sure that if somebody's going, it's not because they can't think of what to say. It's because the is the point. Like, somebody does something really, really silly and everybody's just sitting there going, okay? Things like that. You want to have it have a purpose. And I do have characters where they have uhs and ums interspersed in their speech because it indicates that they are feeling insecure, or that they're unsure of what they're saying, or, sometimes they're being sarcastic about it, But the reason that those are in there is for a specific purpose. Now, how do you learn what good dialogue sounds like? You can just hang out and people watch and listen in on, people talking to each other and the pacing of how people go back and forth. That can get stalkery, just saying. Don't get stalkery. Just paying attention to how people talk back and forth. Differences in how people talk back and forth, whether they are in a casual setting versus a professional setting, whether they are well educated versus not as educated. There may be differences in how high school dropouts speak compared to college grads. In fact, I would pretty much guarantee that. However, do remember that setting is going to have a significantly higher impact on the way people talk than class. A college graduate in a casual setting will not speak better than a high school dropout in a professional setting. That's, just not usually how that works. Unless the person is making a point about being, different from the rest of the people in the setting, then they might emphasize how they communicate differently. So all of these need to be conscious decisions when you understand the nuances of how these things tend to work. And to a certain degree, you are playing into stereotypes. I'm not going to lie. It is not necessarily derogatory. And I say not necessarily because obviously it can be, but it's not necessarily derogatory to have more enunciation quirks in people with lower education. These are things that do tend to happen. You know, you can portray it as, oh my gosh, they're uneducated, or you can just make it be like, this is just how they talk. And, you know, I have characters who say gonna and cuz and, you know, all these other things. That's fine because that's how people talk. And it really doesn't matter what class you're from. If you're in a casual setting, you're probably going to talk like that. That's literally how that works. Aside from actually, you know, snooping around other people's conversations, the other really good way to learn about how to write dialogue is to find really good examples of dialogue written. Now, there are some books that have good dialogue, but what we really pick up on is good dialogue in TV shows. You know, there's a couple of TV shows that are just praised for their dialogue. Some of the ones that I've seen are, of course, pretty much anything by Whedon. I mean, come on. What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, was praised for its dialogue because it has a lot of natural sounding dialogue because it's a mockumentary, and so there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of arguing, there's a lot of, you know, just kind of more natural conversational stuff. So that's a good one to look at. The West Wing. If you have a movie that you find yourself quoting a lot, especially if there are situations where characters are talking back and forth and you're like quoting the whole discussion, that's probably something you want to look closer at as to, you know, how they paced it, how they move back and forth, how far they let characters go off on a tangent in their conversation before they bring it back to like the central point of what they need the discussion to be, things like that. Look for those characteristics and see how somebody who writes good dialogue does it. And then look at what they're doing that is so good. Obviously, that's not as necessarily easy as it may sound, so of course, it takes a lot of experimentation. Like I said, saying the dialogue out loud with somebody or with the voices in your head, both are good options. To me, there is good dialogue is good dialogue, particularly when I can hear it playing in my head like a movie. You know, once I hear the voices just kind of going in my head, I know I've got something going. Then there are also some books that have really good dialogue, and anything that, you know, you like, anything you enjoy the back and forth between characters in a book, you know, look closely at that dialogue. See how long it is that each character speaks before the next one speaks. When do they have monologues, if they have monologues at all? What makes their dialogue so good? What makes it realistic? You know, because obviously dialogue that is written has a chance to be polished, so there's like this combination between being realistic and being polished. It's this balancing act. So look at where they're emphasizing that balance. That would be a good place for you to start then. One of the things that I do find incredibly helpful is not just hearing the voices in my head say things, but like when I'm writing it, sometimes I will literally say what I'm writing out loud just to hear it. Does it sound right? Is the pacing right? Is the feel of the syllables right for the mood of scene? And, each scene does have a mood. You don't want really long words and drawn out dialogue during a fight scene, because people are just, people are throwing shade just like they're throwing punches. So you want the dialogue to be snappy. You want the words chosen to be sharp and even brief. Go with that. If you have a favorite dialogue tip, trick, or technique, make sure you comment it down below so we can share these things. And I hope this has been helpful to you. In terms of announcements, I will be doing NaNoWriMo. I know I promised to get my next writing challenge up, but honestly, I keep forgetting about it. Mostly because I'm actually writing. So I do have Blood of the Moon over halfway done now. Yay! And I will probably end up finishing it for Nano and then working on something else for the rest of Nano, because I could do a whole project just for Nano, but I really want to get Blood of the Moon done. I may just end up doing a whole bunch of projects that I really should have finished and call that my Nano. We'll call it Finish Nano. Yay! If I start speaking Finnish, it's not you, it's me. So as soon as I get that writing challenge done, I will be announcing it. If you have any suggestions for what I should do for a writing challenge, let me know. I took a poll in my newsletter, and the recommendation was Mo books. I think I'm gonna have to do with Mo books, since I did 13 publications in 24 months last time. Most of those were short stories, so I may end up doing something that is specifically novels and see if I can maybe do a certain number of novels in a year. Bonus, by waiting so long to do this challenge, I can start it either at the end of NaNoWriMo or the beginning of 2021. May the year be much nicer to us than 2020 has been. I hope this has been helpful, and we will see you guys later. I don't hear voices. I'm just drawn that way. The problem with Gaelic is you had a whole bunch of people who were torqued off at the Romans, and they're like, you're gonna make us use your alphabet? Fine, we'll use the whole alphabet for every word. Say it's not true, though. The only stalks we like are celery stalks. Revenge of the Picts. Pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, talk a little, cheek, cheek, cheek. Pick a little, pick a little. That's all for this one, but you can see more by clicking on the videos here. Like this video and subscribe to get even more great content. Don't forget to ring the bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a new and awesome video. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and more. Just check out the links in the description. Make sure you also check out the Rune Spells series and my 99-cent short stories. You can get all of that free by becoming a patron and supporting me on Patreon. Stay safe and keep writing!